be a big thing that we're going to kind of touch on because I think setting expectations and being transparent is very important. When to and how to schedule, that's going to be a big thing, especially with new agents. We'll talk about that. There's a lot of different inspectors out there, so how do you choose an inspector? Extra services that are out there. We're really going to just touch on the big three that I have, radon, termite, and sewer scopes. So more common that inspectors are starting to do sewer scope inspections. It's bigger on the east side of the state, but we're bringing it to the west side more. And then I'd like you guys to join me on inspection. So I have an inspection that I did back in April that I took extra photos to hopefully guide you guys to see how the inspector moves through the home. You can learn about the process. You'll see the abundance of items that we're going to be looking at. Hopefully you'll get an understanding of what the inspector's looking for, looking at, and then we can review some of the inspection report. Okay, so that's what I have for you guys today. So for the new agents out there, what is the home inspection? Well, basically the definition is it's a non-invasive visual examination of the accessible areas of the home. So it's an overview of the home's condition, and it's typically all visual. The home inspection is designed to identify defects within specific systems and components so that your client can have a better understanding of the home's overall condition. Okay, so pretty much that's the definition for a home inspection. In most cases, it's much, much more than that. Okay, for some, it's a nice experience. They've never gone through a home before. Maybe they're just coming off the couch of their parents' home. So they could be first-time home buyers in that case, right? A lot of times, first-time home buyers are super excited. We'll end up having almost a party at the home where we have aunts and uncles and friends and family are coming to see their first house. Everybody's sharing that first experience with them. So that's a great time to be a part of. In most cases, it's a chance to learn, and there's a lot to learn, right? A house is made up of a bunch of different components. And if you alter one component, it has an adverse effect on many others. So learning about home ownership is huge during the home inspection. Sometimes it's an opportunity just to see the house again, maybe for the first time. So you might come across out-of-state buyers. How do you handle an out-of-state buyer? Some agents are out there doing video calls, FaceTime and so forth. So those are always interesting. If I get an out-of-state buyer that they basically point, click, bought a home, and now they're seeing it for the first time. Smells are always the biggest comment that I get for out-of-state buyers. It smells different than I was expecting. So whatever the reason may be, right, the home inspection is designed to help, to educate, and provide ways to improve, reveal hidden issues, ultimately leaving the client feeling confident with their home. Okay, in my opinion, the home inspection isn't geared towards just a damage report. It should highlight the good as well as the bad. Basically, the inspector is there to help, in my opinion. Questions so far, guys? So, for the new ones out there, what's covered on a home inspection? Every inspection company is going to be different, especially back to Michigan doesn't regulate the way a home is supposed to be inspected. We all will have an SOP, a standards of practice. Most of the guys in our area all follow the InterNACHI standards of practice. The SOP is basically going to be an outline of what the inspector can and can't do, or should or shouldn't do, required to and not required to. But pretty much it's a general makeup of the home. And so that's going to be things that the report and inspection is going to reflect is the roof, the exterior, okay, the interior components, structure, that could be basements, crawl spaces, slab foundations. You'll have heating and cooling. You might run into different types of systems as far as boilers. Heat pumps are being more popular with the mini splits that you're seeing. Plumbing, electrical, attics. There could be chimneys as far as like fireplaces. Those can be additional services that some guys will run a camera up through the flue on those. Of course, the bathrooms, kitchens, and laundries. Pretty much anything that's attached to the home will generally be included in that standard SOP. Okay, so those are what's covered in a normal inspection. Yes.
And we had a question this past week
Yeah.
or week before about roofs in snow. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So ultimately, it boils down to the individual inspector's efforts. What I mean by that is, as inspectors, according to the SOP, we're not required to walk on a roof. So some guys may just stand back with binoculars. Some will use an inspection pole. Some will get a ladder up there, walk on the roof. Some use drones. Okay, when it's covered with snow, what can you do? Again, it boils down to the individual's effort. In my business, I always make it a practice, no matter how tall the roof is, I'm getting my ladder up there and brushing off some snow. So I can at least identify the type of shingle you have, get a best guess for age, tell you the number of layers that are there, right? Because we could have 1, 2, 3, we could have multiple different layers of roofing material. So it kind of boils down to the inspector's individual effort. With it being a blanket of snow up there, of course, there's a ton that's restricted visually, okay? So we can't comment on a lot of different things of that, right? We might not see flashings. We might not see moss or missing shingles or blown off shingle tabs, patch roof things. There's a lot that's restricted visually. You'll get that, of course. Different seasons pose different strengths. In winter, I love it because we have a blanket of water sitting on that roof. Most homes aren't insulated properly, so we have heat loss. So now I can let you know about the winter problems: ice damming, ice buildup, energy loss. Because it's a blanket of water up there, I use thermal imaging. So when I get into the interior side, we can tell if we have ice dams leaking into walls. You can really identify moisture better in the winter than if it were to be an 80-degree summer day that it's just been dry for the past week. So if that helps. There's benefits to the winter. There's also restrictions to the winter. Okay, so why is the inspection important? Well, basically, you need to know what you're buying, right? These are big money purchases that take ongoing maintenance and never-ending maintenance. There's so much to a home. You have to use your hard-earned money to keep that in good maintenance. You want to know its condition, right? So again, the inspection's not just about the damage report, the damage items, the things that are going wrong. It's about a whole overview of the home's condition. And so you're going to want to know that. One of the reasons why it's important, maybe the home inspection contingency. Okay, this contingency provides that if an inspection reveals something significant, maybe a big defect, maybe an electrical hazard, your client may have an opportunity to walk away from the deal. I'm not the pro with that. Your broker and Kindle can help you educate you on home contingencies. Okay, so they're going to be the pros with all of that. Documentation of the home is a big. So does the seller's disclosure match up? It's a common thing we'll run into. I'll start asking questions in the beginning to the buyer. They'll say we have this type of system. The roof is newer. That's always a common thing. Okay, well, what does newer mean? That's open for interpretation there. As far as they're expecting it to be maybe 1 or 2. I get up there, it might look like a 20-year-old roof. So we start asking those questions. So does the age of the furnace, if they say it was 2014, is it a newer furnace? Is it an older? Does that disclosure match up? A lot of times it can be just as simple as the disclosure says the house has something. Well, is it there and does it work? I get a lot where the house has central air, but there's no interior coil. The seller maybe didn't know what central air was. It could have just been a window AC unit. So that's always important, making sure that things kind of line up. And that's a great reason the inspection report will document and catalog all that so that when it comes time to reviewing, you can handle those discrepancies. It's an opportunity to negotiate, right? So going through the inspection, we might find something that then maybe down the road with your agent or you guys, the agents and your clients, you can negotiate. You can figure out if the house is safe or not. Coming across microbial growth is a common term you'll hear us use. And that's basically talking about mold. Inspectors aren't supposed to use the word mold because there's a bunch of different types of mold out there. And unless you lab test it, we should just use a broad term of microbial growth, but health hazards, right? So is that house safe and healthy to live in? Education for the buyer is one of my favorite things. Learning about the home's overall condition. A house is basically a puzzle, so you get to help solve that puzzle and figure it out, help somebody understand what they're buying. Maintenance items are always big. So again, if it's not just a damage report, in my case, my reports are geared towards highlighting some maintenance items for everybody. And then things you might need to budget for. So again, educating them as they go. Question?
I'm going to interject again, and we'll have a whole conversation about that in coaching, but mold is its own, whole, and you can have a whole 2-day discussion just on that and why they're not allowed to say mold. But also coming from the other perspective, because like if I'm representing the seller, I want to see the photos, right? And if it looks like black mold or brown mold or whatever, we don't want it tested, right? So like if the buyer is requesting that we have it tested, we're not doing any of that yet. We're going to have further discussions, because if it does come back that it's a harmful mold, your seller is required to disclose and remediate.
Okay.
So I've got that down. Additional topics that we can cover later, but I think that's great that you understand too that Glenn says, it says microbial growth. So I have seen inspectors too that don't know what they're doing, and they will write black mold on a contract or on a report without understanding that they can't determine whether or not that's black mold.
Right. And with that, right, that's just an adjective on before you're identifying a color with that, but there's a bunch of different health concerns within that.
Yep.
Attic growth is a common thing that we'll run into because of improper ventilation, and so you'll get that. And again, in that case, most of the time it's harmless to you on the interior side because of the way the roof shall ventilate. But it's something not to try to identify, because if you're not lab testing it, you shouldn't. So good point. Yes. All right. Setting expectations for the buyer. To me, this is the most challenging variable of the process. Us agents and inspectors, we're there to help, to educate, and to guide the buyer. The buyer gets the luxury of making decisions, right? They have to make decisions. Do they buy the house? Do they not? Do they move forward? Do they want this? And so forth. Our job is really not there to make those decisions for them. But if we can educate them enough, give them as much information as possible, then they can make an educated decision, okay? And I found by being upfront and transparent helps set the stage on that, right? So coming into a home today, if I go inspect one, or tomorrow, I'm going to tell my client that I cannot test your AC unit because it is too cold, right? The outdoor temperatures, it'd be not safe for me to operate that system. I have to be transparent with that, because then when they get the report and they come through and they're like, well, wait a minute, you didn't test the AC. Does that work or not? We don't want those after-hour conversations and somebody feeling shorted that I didn't test. So I think on all areas, especially on the agent side, you guys, Kindle can really help you in this area of setting your buyer up for the expectations of what's going to happen. Let them know what's to expect during this process of your offer being written, doing inspections, if you get the luxury to do inspections. After the inspection, what's going to happen, right, with negotiations, letting them know maybe what can be completed, what can't be. Say you add on different services. If you guys can be transparent with them of letting them know, okay, some services can be completed the same day. Some we're going to have to wait to get results. Timelines, all of that. The more transparent you can be, people are going to enjoy their process much better, okay? So letting them know what can be completed during, say, a certain inspection, like you were just saying, okay, winter, your inspector's going to go. He can't see most of the roof. We kind of know it's older. He's going to do the best he can. On both fronts, right? We want to make each other look good. I want to do a great report for everybody, but setting those expectations and being transparent really helps. Okay, I think a big thing too is some buyers think that everything I put in a report, the seller automatically has to fix. That's not the case. So being, again, transparent, letting them know, setting those expectations, what the seller may or may not say yes to. Maybe you front load. I know a lot of agents kind of write their offers reflecting what they've already seen, so their offer reflects that. And then some buyers get the inspection report and they see a bunch of maintenance things and they say, well, wait a minute, we want all this fixed too. Well, no, we've already kind of done some pre-writing in the beginning. The seller doesn't have to agree to that. So setting those expectations is huge, very important. I think the more you can find how you want somebody to treat you, if you can reflect that to them, you're going to be very successful with that.
And we're setting those expectations several days before we get to the inspection. We're not doing it when we get there with the inspector.
Right.
We're having those conversations. I have them in my buyer strategy session and then remind them again once we go under contract.
Yep, exactly. I'm not an agent, so I don't know how what a good practice is. I just hear and meet a lot of agents, but I see a lot of agents talk how while they're walking through with their buyer on a showing, they're already setting those expectations. Yes, this is something we can have further evaluated, and you haven't even written an offer, you're just on the home showing. Guiding them through, the more you can know about the home as well, the better that helps, because now you're an educated agent as you're walking through, looking like, okay, well, yep, that crack does look a little concerning. We definitely want to get inspections on that. Maybe we're also going to write into the offer that we want a specialist to come out and look at it as well as the general home. So just more you can be upfront with your client, the better. Right?
I'm going to insert one more time
Yeah.
with the one that I just did with Glenn last week too. We knew going through it that there was a little bit of a slope, right, on the floor where the dining room would be in the kitchen. But with the snow all around the house, I really couldn't see the exterior foundation. That portion was not finished off in the basement, so I was able to see the underside, and then there was no evidence of cracking on any of the tiles. So for me, it looked like some settling, but not anything that would be structural.
Yep.
But again, I was able to tell Glenn, right,
Yep.
this is the one thing that I see that is the main cause of concern for me. Can you verify what I think?
Yep. That's super helpful for the inspector as well. Most, I feel like, make it a good practice to ask people up front before I get to doing my whole process. But does the buyer, the agent, anything I should know? Is there anything on the disclosure? Seeing that, right? The more information you give me, now at least it's on my radar. Because inspectors, we have about 1,500 to 2,000 items that we're going to look at during that. And we're there about 2.5 to 3 hours. So it can go quick, it can go fast. Especially if there is a party going on, right? Kids are running around, somebody's got my tool bag, I don't know, right? You can get distracted really quickly, but we're pros, so we're used to it. But yes, setting expectations is huge. Okay, so when and how to schedule. When should you schedule a home inspection? I always say as soon as possible, right? Get those inspections booked as soon as you can. That helps the inspector ensure that I can deliver for your client, and your client can complete all of the inspections that they might want to or be interested in doing. Certain inspections take additional time. Okay, radon, for example, radon has to sit a minimum of 48 hours. It can get a little bit dicey with that as well. If there's best practices, if we come in and all the windows are open in the house, technically, the home should be closed up 12 hours in advance before the test can be, considered accurate with that. So be careful writing shortened inspection periods. Inform your client about, okay, this is setting those expectations and being transparent. We're going to write a shortened inspection window. Glenn might not be able to do certain inspections, or your inspector might not be able to provide that test for you because maybe we did a 3-day window versus a 10 or so forth. Okay. So just be careful writing shortened inspection periods. I always think it's great to reach out to the inspectors in advance. I have a number of agents that text me and call me personally before they're writing an offer. They're always like, hey, Glenn, we're about to put something in. What's your availability? That really helps. That makes it easy for me when I get the green light to go. Okay, I can do all this. And versus me finding out, wait a minute, I just spoke with your client. The client wants to do all this. Now you just told me we have 3 days. I can't do all that. You have to make those calls back, break a little hard on that. Reaching out to your inspector in advance is always a good strategy in my opinion. Because the last thing we want to do is have our client feel shorted or uncomfortable in the process, because we're there to help them through it, right? This is hopefully their first home that they're buying. Those are always fun, but we don't want them to feel shorted in any way. Okay, so how do you schedule a home inspection? Okay, so who hasn't scheduled an inspection yet? Anybody? Okay, cool. There's going to be lots of different ways to schedule inspections. Each inspection company is going to be different. There's a lot of different methods. Some have their preferred method. Basically, you can call, text, or email a company, and you're going to get a hold of somebody. Depending on the company structure. For me, I'm a single man operation. I don't have an office person that answers my phone. Some people use call services. They might be a single member, but it's directed to a call service. So you'll call, you'll get some guy in Texas, takes the order for it, and then the inspector gets the information. There's firms, there's multi-inspectors. So most of us will have online scheduling. Okay, online scheduling is great in my opinion because it has all the information right there in a questionnaire and a checklist. So when you go to plug in anything, all the information that I need to get the green light to go for you is there. All the correct spelling, the address to the house, the emails. It's always, when you're talking on the phone, that's always the hardest thing, right there. Somebody's so used to saying their email address. So when they say it to you, it's like 10 word, boom, there it is. I'm like, could you please repeat that again? Let's go line by. Online's great. So then you don't look like a goofball on the phone with all of that. Online's also amazing because it's there for the after hour approvals, right? I'm old school in a little bit of ways where you don't call after 5:30. Of course, we all answer our phones anyways. But say you get an offer accepted at 9 p.m. Online is there. You can go in, you can see people's availability, and you can schedule it for the next day or the days down the road. So online is great. Check again with your inspector if they have that. Who should schedule the home inspection? That's always a topic that's out there.
Let's let them answer it. Who schedules the home inspection?
The client.
Okay.
Thank you, the client.
Yep. So I see it a lot of different ways. Again, your broker will help you in all that. I see it. I get a lot where the agents reach out to me directly. I have it where they've given people multiple options. They chose me, but the agent still schedules it. I get people that go online, fill out all the information for the client. I have it where the client calls me directly. So there's a lot of different options there. Basically, I would say find the way that works best between the agent, the inspector, and the client. Now, Tyndall can help you with that. I know each group does things differently. Some groups that I know, I'm the only one that ever talks, and I don't meet the client until I get there or ever speak to them. So I'm not the pro to tell you what you can and can't do on that, but yes.
Well, and back in the day, we all did, right? Everybody scheduled the home inspection for their client until there were a few lawsuits about that, right, and steering. So, but again, as we've had our conversations, I will not schedule it for them.
Yeah, I personally like it when the client schedules me directly because, again, I gear everything to have them go to my website. It's just easy. It's there for them. Then they have a full general makeup of who I am based off the website. They see all the inspection options that they might want to choose with that. They see the pricing up front. So then there's no the guy breaks up the checkbook and says, how much do I owe you? And looks back at his agent and says, well, you were thinking it was less. Those are always awkward situations, okay? I personally like it when the client schedules directly. because then you can reach out to them and talk to them in advance too.
And when we're talking about the website and having them scheduled, part of that conversation that you're having is, a basic inspection is going to cover this. There are add-ons that you should consider or that you might want to do. So we added a radon test for the home that we did last week because it has a basement that is majority underground and they have a 4-month-old child. And we just want to make sure it's safe and there's no radon. But your average buyer is not going to understand what all of these extra add-ons are. So it's also your job to explain. I always say, go look at the website, right? I am going to recommend that you add this, or these 2 things on. You can add on anything you want. You just have to pay for it. Let me know if you have any questions.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, giving them more information up front, having an educated buyer is great. Sometimes, it's a blessing for my pocketbook. I get people that just click everything. It might be a brand new build. And so I kind of look and I say, well, I don't really need to do a pest inspection. The house was built just yesterday. So then I bring that to their attention and I discount them, of course. I won't charge them. But sometimes I get people that do that. They just think they need to buy everything and the inspections, well over $1,000 and really they don't need certain services. So, okay, now that you know how to schedule, okay, how do you choose an inspector? So there are dozens of options. How do you choose? That's pretty much up to you. A common starting point is agent referral. Maybe go meet inspectors. This is a great example, right? You guys are meeting me. You can go online, right? You can Google them, maybe make a phone call, talk to somebody on the phone in advance. Communication is huge in the inspection world. Sometimes you might not ever meet that inspector until you show up to the home. So if you can meet them in advance, that's always great. Not all inspection companies are the same, so keep that in mind. Again, there's company structure. So there's firms, those are nationwide, right? One business owns multiple inspectors across the United States. Pillar to Post is an example of that, where they might be locally, individually owned, but it's a giant firm. Then there's operations where there's multiple inspectors. One guy has a company, he's got a bunch of people that work for him. And then there's single inspectors like me. So be aware of the different company structures. Some people like a certain way. Some people are, I guess you could say, brand loyal, where they like the company. You might not always get the same inspector with that. Some guys or some agents just love working directly. They have that personal relationship with said guy, so they kind of go in that direction. Reports are always going to be different, okay, with the inspector. Reporting is huge. The report is what you are going to use for negotiations and understanding the home. Reports are broadly different. Some are short, some are real long, some can be vague, some can be overly detailed. There can be pictures, there can be videos, some are only online. I've even seen handwritten reports. Some guys still do handwritten. I don't know if it's just a more northern thing that you get, but reports are going to be different, okay? And so most of us are all using inspection softwares where we'll have that right here on our phone or a tablet, and everything that we need to go through is right on our phone so we don't miss, and we're taking pictures as we go. That's huge in my opinion because that allows me to take all those items and get the report to you out the same day. Okay, so there's going to be different softwares that guys will use, and then there's different delivery methods. I get my reports out same day. I have for the last 10 years. Others might give you in a day or two, depending. So that's always crucial to ask. Say if you're working with a new inspector and you are on a shortened timeline, bring that question up. Say, okay, how soon until we get the report? Is it same day? Is it on site? Or is it going to be a couple of days, right? Because if you're on a time crunch, we hope not to get you that report 2 days later when you're outside your inspection windows. Learning to read and interpret the reports is going to be very helpful for you. Some inspectors will have inspection report examples on their site. Okay, so you could do a little bit of Google stalking, going around and looking at different reports. That can be very helpful. Most people, as you get in a rhythm, you might find an inspector or two that you work with and you're very familiar with going through their reports. You're used to how the outline is. You almost can then just start skimming because you don't have to go through all the fluff. You're looking at those bullet points. Most of us will have a report summary in there, but the summaries don't necessarily have the pictures. So figure out each different report, learn those, okay? And there's gonna be different reports as far as a home inspection report is going to be different than what your sewer scope report looks like, what your radon report looks like, what your mold report, your well and septic. You can also probably ask other agents if you're new, right? Maybe ask an agent, hey, am I able to see a past report that might be available? Again, just get yourself familiarized with those so that when you come time to sit down with your client and review all that, you feel comfortable. You're not hemming and hawing. Your client's asking you questions on what does this mean? What is that? Is that a big deal? You're already familiar with it. That would be very, very beneficial in my opinion. Okay. Questions, guys? Nothing?
Yeah. I'll if you want.
Yeah, we got.
You're looking like you got me, like you want me to ask questions. Like how much does it vary lead time for you, like summer versus winter? What's your busy season?
Yeah, good question. It's been interesting over the last many years, just with our markets. You guys probably had seen that. I track a lot of my stuff. It tend to be springtime, we'd see a huge influx where it might be, okay, I'm a week out or I'm 5 days out or something like that. So lead time, what do you mean by lead time? Like how many days until I can get there for you, or how many days should you reach out to me?
How many days from the time that I first reach out to you can you get to a property? Like if I let you know, here's a guy who's going to call you.
Yep. So seasonally, around the holidays, it lightens up. This November for me was awesome. I was very busy. I was a consistent week out. Other months, it can be slower. Summer and spring tend to be very more busy, where it is about a 5 to 7 days. So again, that gets back into just reaching out to your inspectors, maybe staying in touch with them. Say, hey, I'm showing a client that's very interested. We're about to write offers probably in the next 2 or 3 homes. Maybe just do hedge your bet there, reaching out to them and say, what's your schedule been like the last week or so, last 2 weeks?
Okay. Follow-up question.
Yeah.
What do you want us to tell our clients that your lead time is?
Yeah, be open with them. Say, hey, Glenn's been kind of slow, or this inspector's been consistently a week. So we want to consider that. That way they kind of know that. Okay, they found a house, they want to write an offer. At least they have an idea in their mind where they're not leaning like, yeah, let's write in short inspection periods. And you're like, well, wait a minute, that inspector that you're kind of choosing is out too far. So I don't think it'd be wise that we write a short period like that. Okay.
I just chime in on that. I generally, when I write an offer, if I know we're going to do home inspections, before I submit the offer, I've already reached out to inspectors I like and said, hey, this one's pretty competitive. It's a Friday, what's your Tuesday look like? And we button that up. So when I present the offer, I can say, you'll see, we've got a 5-day inspection window. I've already reached out to my inspector. He'll be there Tuesday. If you choose to accept our offer, he'll be there Tuesday at 9 o'clock in the morning. We'll get that cleared by noon.
Yes.
Yep.
So line it up before even the offer is accepted.
You'll get a sense of, I'm writing a good offer, I think it's going to get accepted. I go all the proactive steps from there. The lender obviously is involved in that loop. They're contacting the listing agent when they present the offer. And when I call them, I can say, should you choose our offer, we're already lined up. If it goes, I would call Glenn and say, great, we're in, do it, full inspections. If we get beat and it goes back, I'd say, thanks for being available. We didn't win this one, you'll be on the next one.
Right, we get that a lot, the pencil and the pen, right? So, hey, pencil me in on this day, Glenn, we're about to write, and I'll let you know. Some of us inspectors will have cancellation policies, right? If you cancel within a certain time, that messes up our schedule, but we can at least block those times out for you. If you're like, okay, it's Sunday, we're gonna write it in, and we're hoping, do you think you can get there, Glenn, by Friday or Tuesday or whatever? I'll pencil that out so nobody else can block or take that online, and then you let me know as soon as the offer is accepted. Great, then we lock it in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
great. That's all good info.
Yeah. Okay, so besides the home, I want to talk about, there's a lot of different service add-ons, but I like to go over the big three with you guys. The common services that you might want your, excuse me, to add on to your home inspection. We're going to talk a little bit about, are these even important? Why aren't they included in the standard inspection? And then should you advise your client to add these on? So we're going to talk a little bit about radon testing, termite inspections, and sewer scopes. Those are the big three. Okay, so radon testing. What is radon? Radon is a radioactive gas that is released out of the earth and can put you and your family more at risk of developing lung cancer if exposed to high levels over a long period of time. Okay, so great. Lung cancer, second leading cause of lung cancer is from radon exposure. That's not great to know. How do we know if these levels are high? Well, you test for it. Okay, that's where the radon test comes in, and you use monitors. There's a few different types of testing. Here's a couple examples. So most of us will use what are called continuous radon monitors, CRMs, and it shows me here. But basically, this is the device up here. There's certain requirements on how it needs to be set up and space. We tend to put those monitors in the lowest livable section of the home. In this case, over here, you can see it, it's a basement bedroom. That's the spot that somebody's going to spend most of their time, right? 8 hours of sleeping, that's long-term exposure. And the device just sits there, and what it's going to do is once you start the test, it starts taking air samples every half hour or hour, and then it's going to produce a graph and an average indoor reading for us. Okay, and again, radon tests have to sit a minimum of 48 hours. Okay, so those results can't be delivered the same day for you, so letting your buyer know that in advance. There's different ways to go about with radon. I always like to try to reach out to the agent, or I at least ask my client in advance, what kind of inspection timeline do you have? Okay, do I have the luxury of placing the machine at the inspection and then coming back 2 days or 3 days later to get that? Or do I need to place it ahead of the inspection, scheduled inspection date? That way I can get the 2 to 3 days of testing and have all results for you on your inspection day. Okay, so it's a little bit of a scheduling battle there, but it's nice. Again, just know that it can't be delivered the same day. So what is a high level of radon? Any readings over 4 picocuries. So the EPA has set an action level, and they use a unit measurement of called picocuries. Anything higher than a 4 is considered elevated. So if you do have elevated levels, how do we get rid of this radon within the home, right? That's where you'll install a radon mitigation system. And I'll show you some examples of those. The most common one you guys are going to run across is an active sub-slab depressurization system. And that's going to be a PVC pipe that's ran from the basement out the side of the house. In line, there will be a fan, basically like a back fan, and that's going to create a suction underneath the home. And that's going to vacuum all the radon gas before it can enter the home, send it up through the pipe, and deliver it to the outside, okay, up and above the roof line, preferably. So if you see here, this is what a radon system will look like. So if you guys are walking around a home and you tend to see something like this, okay, that means the house has a radon mitigation system. Down below here is the fan that we were talking about, the inline fan that goes up. Also should be a disconnect. You see the electrical there, and then that pipe runs all the way up, and that's what it's going to look like. So if you see one of these on a home that you're showing, it may have meant that the house has been tested. The house could have tested elevated for levels. Maybe it was installed just for preventive maintenance, but it's nice to know what those initial levels were. So ask the seller, the listing agent, however, if they have any records of radon, if you see a mitigation system like that. If it was tested, ask what it was. And also ask, after the system was installed, was there any output testing? It's nice to know what the initial levels were, but then it's also preferred to know what the output levels are as well. When radon installers put their systems in, there's no agency that comes back and quality checks their work. There's no local authority that has to sign off on that. It is nice to do an output testing, not as common because it's additional time and additional money. I have tested many systems that have been installed. The levels weren't reduced the way we would like them to be. And that had to be because there was an issue at the fan or something on the initial install. Thankfully, the client did an output testing because otherwise the system was there, but it wasn't working the way it was supposed to. So the more information you can get for your buyer, the better. More on this, just to touch base. If you see a radon mitigation system, doesn't necessarily mean the house is good to go with that everything is safe. You want to ask that information again on age. They recommend you test the house that does have a system every about, in my opinion, every 5 years or so, just to ensure that the system's working the way it should. If this radon system here, I had one the other week, that it was a 28-year-old system. The radon fan was in the attic, and that was dripping water, just because, again, that pipe runs up through, so we had snow melt coming in. The buyer wanted to do a test just to ensure everything was working. The levels were through the roof. We were levels 20. So what that indicated is the fan's weak due to age. Maybe one of the blades in there was having an issue. It just was a 30-year-old system, and it was time to have some maintenance done. So I'm glad that that client tested. So just because you see this, kind of get information based on age. Is it a newer system? Is it an older system? It still might be wise to test the home. Okay. I like to point this out to you guys, a little education. So on the interior side, so again, you might have a system. It might not be on the outside. If it's a condo, depending on how it's ran, maybe the configuration, because sometimes they can be unsightly if they're on the outside of the house. They might run up through the garage and into the attic, so you might not see that fan initially. If you're ever in the basement and you see something like this, okay, it kind of looks like a plumbing system. This is what's called the U-tube manometer. A manometer is just a pressure difference. That does not have anything to do with the home's indoor radon level. What that radon manometer is telling us, it's basically that the fan is drawing a suction. So if the fan was off, the water levels will be even. As soon as you turn that fan on, it's going to prove that it's pulling a suction. And so in this case, you can see the arrows up here. A lot of good installers will put that arrow right at the initial suction level, and they'll write that down. That way down the road, if the level drops below that initial, we can monitor the fan for performance. So really that's what the U-tube is there for, is to determine if the fan's aging, needs maintenance, or if the system's on or off with that. Has nothing to do with the radon level. Okay, so a lot of times I see people walk in, agents will point to that and they'll say, oh yeah, the house is testing at a 1.5. And I'm like, no, that's just unit of measure for the suction. So you get a little education there. Not a great look, because then you know, I never like to correct anybody if I don't have to, right? But as soon as you make that correct, now the confidence of the buyer and the agent gets broken a little bit. You know, we really don't want to do anything there. But when you do politely explain, that has nothing to do with radon levels. Okay, so keep an eye out for that. That's what a system might look for. That'll be the comment. Here's a couple examples of what radon readings will look like. Again, everybody's report's a little bit different. I put these graphs in my reports for everybody. Over here, we'll have a below reading. You can see how the radon levels will fluctuate, okay? Again, that system, if you're using a continuous monitor, it will produce a graph like this. If another inspector is using an active charcoal canister, or if a homeowner or somebody gets a kit from like Home Depot, those are bags that hang. You let them expose for the basement for a while, you seal it up, you send them to the lab, you'll only get the reading. You won't get any of this data. Our systems that we use are very sensitive. The professional ones have like 4 or 5 sensors to them. They also provide you humidity, pressure levels, indoor temperatures, and we can judge. So say we get a high level that spiked up. Well, what was the reason of that? We might be able to look at those other data points to see, did a storm come through? Did the pressure levels drop or increase? Did that cause anything like that? But here's an example of a low level. You can see it was a 96-hour test, okay, minimum 48 hours. So we exceeded that. Levels are going up and down, well below a 1 here. This is super safe, okay? Again, anywhere between the 0, which you'll never have 0, but 0 to 2, you're in a safe range. 2 to 4, you're in a cautious range set by the EPA. Far side over there, this is an example on an above reading. Look at how this curve goes. Started off pretty mellow, and then at the end, spike went up. It was about 18 in that section. That's a lot of radon, okay? That's a lot of radiation coming in your way. About, is that almost four and a half times the, in that case, when I was looking at it, we were coming into a cold front or a storm that was coming in, and the pressures changed, and then it was allowed. So yes, that was just slightly above at a 5.2. Long-term tests, which unfortunately nobody has the luxury of doing. Long-term tests would be a fourth of the year, 90 plus days. Okay, that's really how you're going to understand the home's indoor level. Long-term tests, if we had high spikes in the 18, maybe for a month or down, that house could have been much, much higher. But thinking about the 74 hours of that test, it was a snapshot, and it wasn't average elevated. Questions with that, guys? Has anybody seen a radon test before? Yeah. Okay.
Those charcoal ones are super time sensitive too. And if somebody says, hey, my dad's going to bring this thing over, if it says hang it for 30 or 42 hours or whatever, you got to be there to zip it up right on time.
Yep, exactly. There's a lot of room for error there. And again, you're sending it to a lab. Yeah, not deemed by, so again, in Michigan, we're one of the states that doesn't regulate anything for radon testing. Go south, Illinois, for example, they regulate their radon. I think it's required for every real estate transaction that a radon test be completed. Then the inspector also has to send their information to a state database, and they track everything. I wish Michigan did something like that, because then a house would have a report. We would be more aware of hot spots in that case, right? We kind of have an idea. Rockford area, Wyoming, Granville area. You get down South Kalamazoo, a lot of radon in there, that area. I live in the historic district. My house leaks a ton of air, so my levels are pretty low. I've tested a couple blocks over, high levels there. East Grand Rapids, high levels. It's all over the place. But the charcoal canisters, there's room for error there. They don't meet the national standards for professional use with that as well. I've seen it. A lot of the at-home kits have come down greatly in price too. They used to be $400 or $500. Now you can get something on eBay for $90.
And the health department used to give them out for free. That's where I'd run into sometimes.
Exactly.
Hey, they're charging another $125 for the radon test. My dad said you can get one for free at Health Department. Like, you can take a ton of time. They're not super accurate. If we're doing this, just pay the money now to have it done.
Yep. So that's where it comes into, right? Did the grandpa test? Okay, now it's high, and now you're on the cellar right. You're like, well, wait a minute, is that a valid test or not? It's just to do it right the first time is kind of the best foot forward with that.
Well, and if you guys are doing it, you're gonna see radon. It happens 1 out of 4, 5, 6 deals. And the nice thing is, you got the test, you put the mitigation system in, they're $1,200-$1,500. Maybe you split the cost, you retest it again. For your buyer, there's a high level of confidence that's going to be working for several years.
Yeah, exactly. Good point there. So putting the system in, not terribly expensive. There's a lot of good companies around us that install them, can be knocked out in about a day or two, depending on the crew's size. So it's not a huge inconvenience. There's a lot of easy ways to bring these systems in and mitigate. You run into a bigger headache with a structural issue than radon. And radon's kind of an easy flame to put out, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I had a radon mitigation system put in my house because we had high levels
Okay.
of radon, but I never had an output test done to follow up.
Okay.
Considering all the issues that we had with like the sheets in the basement off gas like crazy when the first time we turned the heat on. And so we have a little air filter system,
and it measured we had 60 times the EPA allowable amount of formaldehyde inside the house. And I
Oh,
was like,
wow.
what in the world did you guys put my, because I woke up and I was like, my eyes itched. I was like, what in the world are we doing here? And so, yeah, we put that in, but we never got alpha testing. So my question, what is the, how much does it cost to get alpha testing?
Everybody's a little bit different. Pricing will be cheaper adding it on versus a standalone. Okay. I charge $175 to add on, about $200 to $225 for an individual standalone, depending on how far I'm traveling. Some guys charge $200 to add it on. Some might be $150, but that's kind of your ballpark range, $150 to $200 for a test.
Yeah, that's important though. I might actually get that. I might
Yeah, if you already own the home. Yeah. What I would recommend is even just get yourself an at-home kit. Let it sit for a week or so. See what the levels are. Start with there. That's a cheap. Not to take money out of my pocket or any other inspectors, but I would do that. Let it sit. See what an initial rating might be. If it's anywhere, getting close to elevated, or if everything looks fine, great. At least you have a baseline. More data, the better. That's why I always like to advocate if I can let something sit over a weekend versus doing a 48-hour, because the more data we can get, the less, the stronger the reading will be, and we don't have to defute those.
Where would you put that at-home kit in your house?
What kind of structure do you have?
Ranch to the unfinished basement.
Unfinished? You'd put it in the basement, okay? Keep it away from your furnace, any electronics. Depending on your kit, it's probably going to outline some guidelines as far as 30 inches off the floor and in certain head height, right? We don't want to lay it on the ground. We don't want to stick it to a ceiling, and you got to be certain clearances away from the walls. Your kit might tell you all of that, but a simple Google. Typically hang it, get it about 30 inches off the ground.
30 inches off the ground. Like, can I put it up on some boxes or some storage boxes? Set it up.
If it's a canister one, yes. If it's the bag one, they probably want you to hang it.
Okay, interesting. All right.
Just check that test. Okay. So should you test for radon? All right. 1 in 4 homes have an elevated level that poses a significant risk. Again, radon's the second leading cause of lung cancer. Number 1 cause among non-smokers. So if you're a smoker and you have radon, you're doubling down on that. Smokers are more susceptible, and kids, okay, children and young infants are more susceptible as well. Little data, this is some information I got from 2020. About 11,500 people die a year from alcohol-related traffic incidences. It's about double for radon deaths nationally. Okay, so a lot of people think drinking and driving is bad. Radon's that silent killer. In our state, they deem January Radon Action Month, so they kind of make it aware that more people test. Winter is a great time to test because everything is closed up. So when we're doing our tests, we like to have closed door conditions. Okay, and what that means is just go in and out of the house as normal. Operate the furnace and AC systems as normal. Try not to keep windows and doors open for long periods of time. That's helpful information to give to the seller, because what if the seller's moving and during the test they have everything wide open, they had U-Haul in and out, right? Well, now we might not have a very accurate test. That's why winter is a wonderful time to test. Okay. Any questions on radon? Yeah.
If somebody is just hanging radon alarms, is that a good indication of whether there's radon in the home?
You're thinking carbon monoxide?
Dependable, or carbon monoxide testing?
Some homeowners you might run across, the seller will have, there's carbon monoxide meters that will give you a digital readout. There's also radon monitors that are homeowners that will have it, and they might not be an indication of a problem. Maybe they're being proactive of a neighboring home or somebody they know in the area that has had elevated levels, and they're just constantly monitoring that. Yeah. But it's seeing something like that opens the opportunity for a conversation and a question to ask. Right. All right. So what destroying insects? What is WDI inspection? Basically, it's a thorough examination of the home's exterior, mostly the foundation. The home's interior, again, focusing on the structural points, the foundation areas, garages, outbuildings if present. The inspectors poking, probing, crawling, looking for termites, carpenter ants, powder post beetles, and carpenter bees. All of those are wood destroying insects, okay? The inspection is designed to rule out the presence of wood destroying insects and confirm whether sign is active or not. You do your best judgment there. A lot of times it has to deal, especially with termites, is there moisture content going into that. Okay. Some loans may require a WDI inspection. I know VA loans have kind of changed a little bit recently. They require a National Pest Management 33 form to be filled out. Again, your broker is going to be the wealth of information there.
The VA has actually dropped the requirement for pest inspection.
That's what I recently heard.
Yeah. So,
And I had a guy the other day doing a VA, and they had me do a pest inspection. So I don't, so those would be, maybe there's a certain loan that might require, but most of the time it's just an option to add on. These inspections take additional time to the normal home inspection, as well as additional reporting. That's why us inspectors will charge extra. Okay. For example, I can inspect these balloons from this distance, but I can't inspect those balloons for termites and powder post beetles and other insects at this distance. You would have to get right up close, identify. Powdered post beetles leave a teeny little pinhole, like if you took your pencil and poked it in the wood, those are the holes that are there. I can let you know a roof rafter is cracked or not cracked from a certain distance, but I can't let you know if there's beetles damage on that from a distance. So that's where additional time comes into the inspection, additional efforts. Okay? And of course, there's standalone inspections. So I'm going to show you guys some pictures and some videos here. So here's an example of termite damage. Okay, you can see the colonies that they'll make, and then the termites eat the wood. Okay, carpenter ants will just push wood around. Termites are actually going to eat that and destroy the structure. The left side over there, that's what we're really looking for a lot of times. Of course, damage. Damage can be obvious, but shelter tubes. Okay, those are the little mud tubes. We have what are called eastern subterranean termites. They have to stay in their moist, warm environments. So they build these little mud tubes to bridge up and over items, right? Sometimes we might see those on lower foundations of the exterior. They're not going to do anything with that concrete block or the poured wall, but they're going to bridge over that to explore out and figure out where they can get to some wood. Okay, this was the top corner of a door jamb that I had seen at one time. Just kind of tapping along, and sure enough, it was hollow. The other side, this is what was already opened up. This one I actually found prior to the inspection, looking at the listing photos. That's what I had seen. So then I called the client up. I said, hey, I'm seeing evidence, or not evidence, but indications that there could be some wood destroying insects based off this listing photo. Sent it to them. They were like, yes, let's add that on. This ended up being a staircase leg to the basement. The whole staircase was just shot. I'm about 185 pounds. As I was going up and down that staircase was creaking and bending. I said anybody that's over my weight shouldn't walk on this staircase. Okay, this is what termites will look like. This is a video that I've taken. You don't always get the pleasure to see active termites like this. They're real small. Okay, they're these little milky white bugs. You can see them just moving around here. Let's see if I can play that again. Again, poking and probing. If we see sign, we might poke into it. We're not trying to do damage, but if your screwdriver just apparently goes into it and you open it up, we might be able to see, is there activity like that? Again, moisture, they have to have a moist environment. So there's going to be moisture to this. And a lot of times when you're doing a thermal scan, you might be able to just identify that moisture quick, or take a probe meter and poke it. You don't always get to see bugs. Probably 1 out of 10 pest inspections that I see, I actually get to see active bugs. Yeah.
Curious, so like, okay, if you guys poke into something to test it and there's a hole there, but how does the hole be repaired? Are you guys repairing that, or?
Good question. So if something looks great like this, I'm not going to poke it, right? Because then I'd be causing damage. If there's something already like that doorway that was open up, we might poke and investigate.
Okay.
But if we're going through, our job's really not to cause any damage. You get that a lot on outside window wells where there's poor caulkings. If it's not the surface paint, this is my standard, if the paint's not already broken, I'm not going to pierce it further because then I'm the one liable that did the damage.
Gotcha. Okay.
So inspector education comes into play there, and you'll get some guys that don't really know the standards or how to do a home inspection, and they're in there, ripping walls down and you're like, wait a minute, can't do this. It's not your home.
Gotcha.
Yeah, great question. Okay, here's an example of carpentry damage. So the big difference here, again, they're not eating wood, they're just moving things through. So this was a windowsill in a barn garage that was going to be finished. The client had a bunch of plans. They wanted to turn it into an in-law suite, and I got to this window, this is what was there. You can see all the frass and chewings that have dropped down below in the other bay. If you can, does my cursor come up? See how this already has an opening up there? There's a little tube. I would poke that, okay, because there's already damage there. We might investigate. But definitely, yeah, if it's a good plane, I don't want to be the first one to call it damage.
Right.
Okay, here's an example of some carpenter ants. I caught this on the outside of a house. This was going to a fireplace, just going up and down. Okay, carpenter ants are a little bit different to determine. Just seeing a black ant doesn't always mean there's carpenter ant issues, right? There's ants everywhere. There's bugs everywhere. But seeing a colony going in and out, that's a big difference. Okay. Here's some examples of powder post beetles. Now, powder post beetles are going to be common in rough sawn lumber, older homes, barns, things like that. They are a wood destroying insect, but they're on the lower end of severity. Termites and carpenter ants will cause a lot of damage quickly. These guys take time because what they do is burrow in little holes, see where the arrows, they'll plant their eggs, they'll take a few years to hatch, they'll move over and continue to do that. Ultimately, they're going to take a piece of wood, if they're active, and turn it into powdered sugar. Okay. You can see below the screwdriver here, this is a bunch of frass. Okay, that's what you're looking for to determine if these are active or not too. So we might run into an old home. Maybe it's a piece of wood that was brought from outside, put in and stacked it. There's probably beetle holes on it. Is it active or not? That's hopefully our job. If we start seeing frass or powdered sugar, wood shavings sitting on stuff, we know it's active. So this was a video I had taken to show a significant powder post beetle damage. I was in the crawl space and the clients were in the kitchen walking. See all the beetle holes there? They started walking and the powder started falling down on them. I tapped this with my finger and that powder started going everywhere. This beam, this is a load carrying beam running right down the middle of the home that is supporting everything, okay? That's a significant structural defect. That whole beam is going to have to be removed and replaced to make that living room safe. Sure, we're on a ticking time bomb, right? The house is just fine, it's lasted that long. Eventually they have a party, there's going to be compression and crack, and that whole thing is going to come down, right? So unfortunately, that's the issue that you guys will run into is inspectors, we have to tread lightly on how we present things. Never try to escalate anything, but showing, identifying, and then you guys have to help negotiate.
That was really bad.
Yeah, that one was interesting.
I saw a TikTok one a couple of nights ago where the home buyers have bought the home and in the crawl space, more of the plumbing, like was on the ground, right? And the hubby decided to just raise it all up the ground itself, but he did cut notches out, right?
Yeah.
And all the support trusses. And put those pipes up under it. It's like, not gonna cause a problem when it's time to
Yeah.
resell.
I know you guys can't really see this, but this is where a National Pest Management 33 form would be. So when it comes to that, that's the individual form that we'd have to fill out. There's really no pictures with that form, but a lot of times the pictures and everything that we find will be in the home inspection report itself. Okay. So should you guys advise to add on termite inspections or wood destroying insects? Kind of depends, okay? Kind of depends on the style of the home and the age with all that. So I typically say with new builds, no, most likely on that. Is it a newer build? Sometimes you'll run into builders will cut corners on dumpsters and they'll take all the wood products that are out there, throw it under the front porch, pour that slab, and now you're basically taking a bunch of cellulose material and put it in the ground. And that can be a breeding area for wood destroying insects. So if I do see wood destroying insects on a newer build, it's typically something that's about a couple years old. Okay, but if it's a fresh build, no, we most likely won't. Older historic homes, yes, there's a stronger possibility with those. Farm homes, again, I tend to see more beetle damage. Log homes, obviously there's more wood exposure with that. Log homes, real common to see carpenter bee damage. Again, carpenter bees are more of a nuisance, if anything. Yes, they do eat, but they're not severe like the first three. Again, we talked some loans may require it. So pretty much construction style, location, the home upkeep is huge. Do we have trees and vegetation growing over everything? Carpenter ants can get into a home's attic if there are tree branches coming over. So sometimes you're in the attic and like, where did this big group of ants come from? Well, remember that tree that's overhanging the roof. So it kind of depends on what you're seeing to make that judgment call. If a home's in really good shape, and again, there's limitations to this, so be advised there. If the basement is completely finished off, okay, I can't see behind walls. If there's not a drop ceiling tile that I can move, we can't see that. So we might not be able to get to those structural points that we want to. So limitation is big. We can tell if a home's been treated, if it's been treated with the soil treatments. So typically there's two types of treatments for a home, for termites in that case. There's bait systems and then there's soil treatments. Soil treatments, that's where they impregnate the soil with a termiticide and they go around the whole home. You'll see drill marks for that. Okay, that is the tried and true, the best method to treat termites. There's also bait systems. Bait systems are as simple as taking these canisters, putting them around the home. They put a little cellulose material in there and some termiticide, and they're trying to bait them like you would bait deer. Okay. Company structure, some guys don't do the chemical, some only do the bait. The reason for that is with their company structure, the bait systems, they'll charge you lower up front, and then they come back on a monthly service to check those. The soil treatments typically are much more expensive upfront, but you normally have a solid chemical life of about 10 years in the soil. Okay? So those are two types of treatments. Okay, what do you guys think on wood destroying insects? Has anybody come across anything like that? You have? Your house?
No.
Okay.
No, mine's a brand new build from last year. No,
Okay.
No, I helped a guy like remodeling old houses, and my dad did a bunch in the historical district. And gosh, what was that one called? The one downtown that's not Heritage Hill was the.
There's a few different.
There's
Modern Craftsman? No.
It's an H one. I forget the name, but I've helped with a bunch of them. Like off of, we had one 1555 Van Auken, and we tore out the basement, and like everything was a nightmare. I mean, they had eaten through all the it was those ants or whatever, like had chewed through it, but I didn't know what they were at the time. I just replaced all the studs and stuff, like reframed some walls and everything, and yeah, it was fun. We like hit a HVAC duct with a sledgehammer, and it was wrapped in sheets of asbestos. Like it was just all kinds of super fun stuff for the inspectors and everything.
Nice. Yeah, you've gotten your hands in there. That's good.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. More about termites. Okay, so termites can be a tricky thing. Again, you don't always see the active bugs. Some spots that we can see might not have moisture to it. If we see sign over here and we see sign on that far side, and we're seeing multiple areas of sign, and there's never been a treatment on that home, that might be a good point to start asking questions of should this house be treated or not? Because if we're seeing sign and there's no indications of past treatments, is this dormant, unactive, or is there hidden stuff somewhere that we can't see that is actively here? So I always err on the side of caution with that if I'm seeing multiple signs and there's no indications of a past treatment, one thing would be, of course, if we don't see any drill marks on the outside, well, what if there was a bait system? Okay, those baits aren't there anymore. A lot of pest companies, if you can see the shelter tubes, they'll come in with their screwdriver and scrape those off. That's indicating that they have known presence of the termites, they've treated and they scrape those. So now if we see any new shelter tubes, it's new activity, right? So filling in the anomaly as the inspector, if I'm seeing multiple signs, no signs of treatment, termite tubes that have not been scraped, these could be new tubes, there might not be moisture, I might advise, say, yes, we should have this house treated. And again, just bring that information and you guys can let the client make the decision.
When it's treated by drilling, how long does that last?
Typically, the chemicals they use will last about 10 years. The efficiency and the potency of it decreases after a certain time. Most companies will warranty everything for 1 full year, and then they'll ask you, would you like to pay an additional yearly insurance to that? And that's to hedge bet on chemical costs, I guess, that if there's any new activity, they'll come back and treat for free. But typically within 1 year, it's guaranteed on their end. I've been told, and from what I've read, is if you do chemical treatment, the way it's working is those chemicals are in the soil. The termites will go in and out of the home, okay? When they go through that, they're basically getting a car wash effect of that chemical on it. So when they get back to the colony, it starts spreading. Within about 90 days, problem's wiped out as far as activity. Okay. You might run into, seller's disclosure is always interesting and blank, but you might run into where I see signs of past treatment. Either it's a recent owner, or maybe it's an owner for 20 years, or why is there a treatment? We start asking these questions. Maybe the neighboring home had an infestation. They treated their home for preventative maintenance. Sometimes it can be that too. Okay. Yeah.
I know this sounds strange, but do birds ever, by pecking at wood?
Woodpeckers, yeah.
Right, or other birds, is that a determining factor of what damaging insects, or is it just their?
No, so totally going to be a
or-
totally different
Yeah.
damage pattern. So carpenter bees, the closest thing you'll have to that from a woodpecker is a carpenter bee. Carpenter bees make a small little 1/2-inch hole that will be real precise, and then it's going to be a tube that goes in 90 degrees. That's where they plant it. A woodpecker, you'll see this hole. It could be huge, and then it's kind of flared out, right, from this beak going every which way. And then location too. Normally it's on a vertical. It might be, if you see it on wood siding, sometimes you'll see these horizontal lines. That's a woodpecker as well going through, but noticeably different from what a wood destroying insect would do.
Or they're not doing that to try to look for insects in the wood.
Well, there might be insects in the wood, but they might not be wood destroying insects that are in the wood. Yes, it's a good question. All right. Last one I want to talk to you on the big three, sewer scope inspections. This one's my favorite. If I could advise you guys to do anything on an inspection, it would be this, right? If I were to be buying a home, this is the only thing that I wouldn't waive, because I can see everything else pretty much, besides the attic, unless I got permission to go in there. You can't see in your sewer, okay? So what is a sewer scope inspection? Well, it's a video inspection of the lateral sewer line, so the building sewer, from the house at or near the foundation, typically is your access, and then to the city tap, to the HOA tap, or to the septic tank, okay? So it's a video inspection. That's key. Some inspectors that add this on, they may not be taking the video of their inspection. They should be. According to the INTERNACHI standards of practice, they lay it out very clearly that it should be a video inspection, so a recorded video. Just again, every company's different. Ask if they're going to be providing not just pictures, but a video as well. See how they operate, okay? A sewer scope inspection, it involves opening the building sewer from a cleanout or even a roof vent. Sometimes the cleanout hasn't been opened in 2 decades, and so we might have the luxury of coming in through the roof. And then we're going to evaluate the condition of the sewer with an inspection camera. Okay, so it's a special camera that has a monitor. You run it down, and it goes typically through a clean out, and then gets to the city street connection. That would be your common scenario. Most jurisdictions, you will own your sewer line all the way to the city connection. Okay, it doesn't stop at a sidewalk. HOAs can be a little bit different, but most cities you'll own all the way up to that connection. Okay. So scoping the line adds additional time. Could take up to an hour. If everything's going smoothly, normally it's a little bit quicker, 20 minutes to 30 minutes. Additional, you just kind of plan for an hour with that, because if there's hiccups, maybe I can't get into this clean out. Maybe I got in and it goes nowhere. Do I have to go into the roof? Do I have to set up ladders? Do I have to go out and locate defects? Okay. I use cameras that have locators on them. Not everybody does that as well. Just be aware. So locating can be key, that we know it's in your yard, it's in the driveway, it's in the yard, it's at the city, wherever, right? That can add additional time to go out there and then find that defect. One big thing, know that well and septic inspectors, okay, they don't evaluate the building sewer, that lateral line. Okay, the well and septic guy is going to go out there, open up the tank, from the tank down to the drain field. That's what they're evaluating. The line, if this is your tank here, and here's the house, the line that runs out and connects to that tank, that is the building sewer. Okay, that is what you would run your camera through. A well and septic inspector does nothing with that. Okay, so that's a common thing that I get, where I ask, my client if they'd like to add this on, and then they say, oh no, we're having a well and septic. And then I say, okay, well, we're not doing anything. That guy won't be looking at that. A lot of the times, more with well and septic, a lot of times the septic tank is placed really close to the home. So you have a relatively short run to begin with. Some cases it can be hundreds of feet down. That's great to scope, because is it going through a wooded area or anything? So most of the time I see short runs on a well and septic house, but depending on the tank location, it's nice to scope that. Most of the time the line will be relatively not that deep, but it's more susceptible for people driving over it. So that's the biggest thing that I end up seeing, is older homes that have a concrete septic tank and clay pipe. Somebody has driven their quad or something or whatever, backed over it, had a party, and the line's collapsed, or there's breaks or clogs in that, or there used to be a tree. Sometimes I've had it where people have me inspect just to locate the tank, because the well and septic guy could not do it, even though there's public records. I've seen it a lot where people have poured patios or built decks over their septic tank. Without running the line and starting to locate, you won't know that. So, yes.
Does this include like a grinder pump situation where the sewer, the house has a line to the grinder pump and it goes down to the city
So
sewer?
I would only be allowed to scope to that grinder pump. I wouldn't be able to open up the pump on that, and then anything further down I can't look at.
Public access.
So it would be just to that. That's a great option, right? That's again, with well and septics homes, you can have a number of different things. It might not just be to a tank. It might be to a lower lift pump that you said, that's then pumping it up 200 feet up the other way.
Real quick, so I've done several of these sewer lines, and sometimes you watch a scope, it's interesting, kind of gross. But so when the ones are plugged up, there was a thing I saw online that's like a torpedo with superheated waters, things that swirls around. Have you seen any of those where that actually works to clear them out?
Yeah, hydrojetting.
Okay,
Hydrojetting, very, very effective.
Okay.
Basically, it's 3,000, 4,000 PSI that is blasting, you're pressure washing the inside, really cleans up a pipe, okay? If you're going to have roots or anything in a sewer line, there's going to be different types of cleaning. Blades is a common, hydrojetting is another one. Your plumbing contractor should know what he's doing with that. Hydrojetting can destroy an old pipe, right? They might blast right through the wall of that. They can dumb down their PSI for that, but you have to be very careful. Yes, those are super effective. If the line can be hydrojetted, that's what I would recommend. Because blades can get in there. You can't blade clean on a plastic pipe because you'll cut the edges of that. But blades, that's what's always great. We'll talk a little bit more in a moment, but if you had a house that a guy inspects, finds something in there, you ask for it to clean, pay to either have it cleaned again, inspected again, or make sure the plumber can provide you a nice video. Because how did they clean that line? And was it to the standard you wanted? You see those billboards up there a lot, restore flow for $49 or so. It's a 4-inch pipe. They might take a 1-inch auger, poke through, water's draining. The flow is restored, but the drain's not clean. Okay, so I get that a lot on my output scopes, my quality scopes. I'll see what was plugged, but now there's a big hole. And is 6 months or a year, is that going to come back in? So hydrojetting would clear all of that, which is good. Okay, any more questions on just what a sewer scope is? Has anybody not seen a sewer scope or heard about sewer scoping yet? No? Okay. So what are the benefits? Basically, what will it show you? The main thing that it's going to show you is water flow. Okay, we're going to see the water flowing. Does that line drain? That's very important, right? Are we going to be able to flush what we want flush with confidence, and does that get away? I always use a marshmallow reference with clients. As I'm scoping, I tell them, okay, I'm confident you can flush a couple marshmallows, or I'm not confident that we can flush a marshmallow and it's going to get to where it needs to be based off of roots, right? If we can't flush a marshmallow, we can't flush much else, right? So are there going to be issues in the line? Roots, cracks, damage, offsets, blockages are common things we'll come across. So you might know roots, obvious, cracks, obvious, damage, collapsed pipe. Offsets, what's an offset? Clay pipe is made up of sections of pipe every 4 to 6 feet typically, and the older ones are mortared together. The newer ones are gasketed. And so where those pipes connect, they can shift over time. We can get what are called offsets. So what should be a nice smooth edge, sometimes there's a hump, there's a bump, the pipes are offsetted on that. Okay, so we want to evaluate those offsets. More likely to have an issue with an offset that's on the bottom and water's flowing at it, because now we have a lip there. Is something like a baby wipe or a flushable wipe going to get stuck and caught on that? Offsets are an early indication that the pipe is moving. So is that mortar going to break? Okay, roots going to come into that broken mortar joint. So offsets are important to pay attention. If we have an offset that's on the top, not that huge of a deal because water's just going to flow off the bottom, right? But if it's on the bottom, is it going to cause an issue and lead to a blockage? I haven't personally ran into this, but there's defective drain line materials out there. There's a product called Orangeburg. Orangeburg was used in sewer conduits for a long time. Basically what it was OSB, wood material impregnated with tar, and they used it for sewer conduits to run wires, for subway conduit. They thought it was a great idea for a couple years to put it in the ground. Well, basically it's wood in the ground with tar. And what they ended up finding is it didn't stop the moisture like they wanted. We are running water through it. It just started collapsing. So if you come across it, it's a noticeable egg-shaped collapse. It's right, a round pipe turns into this, and then it's black and splintery. It's just wood. Okay, I haven't seen personally Orangeburg, but it's out there. More stuff. Again, scoping is going to just tell you so much. So I always tell everybody, I can advise you and help you maintain your furnace. Once I get into your sewer, I can advise you and tell you how to maintain your sewer line. So have there been previous cleanings? That's helpful information because that might alert us, okay, this line has been cleaned. When was it cleaned? How many years ago was it cleaned? Are ongoing cleanings needed for this home? It's good information, okay? Again, talking about locating. Locating can be really big. It's a big difference between finding a defect in the middle of the yard that's only buried 3 feet down versus under the city street. Thousands of dollars difference to fix that repair, okay? I've seen it where I've traced a line that went out. There was a clog and an issue. It was on the neighbor's property, and then the line did a 90 and came back the other way, back in. It was interesting. But I let them know that, hey, the property lines might have been different at one point. Some of your sewers on their side, so just if they build a fence, be cautious. Is it in the driveway? Is it on your steps? So forth. Only when you scope can you review these issues, because again, it's not visible. At any rate, hopefully we'll have a good understanding of what the sewer line is so that it's not a bad day. The sewer line tends to be like the internet. It's working great until it's not. And then you're like, what's going on here? And then you run into a big mess. I really enjoy and I like Sewer Scope, and I think it's a strong thing to do for people. Okay. Show you a couple of Sewer Scope examples. This is just kind of a setup that you might see. There's a monitor and then a big reel, and you're pushing that down through a clean out. And then you'll be able to see, the line. In this case, that was cast iron that we were going through. Here's an example of going into a septic system. In this case, you notice the drain's not on the ground, but it's elevated up. Most septic systems are going to exit out higher in the foundation. That's a little cap that I had made. Very helpful because now if anybody were to flush something while I'm scoping, it doesn't come back in. In this case, you can see we're 30 feet out to the edge of the tank. Oops. Let me see if I can get that back. Yes, I wanted to pause that for you guys. So older tanks, ideally we like to have what's called an inlet baffle. So we wouldn't be able to see into the tank like this. Older tanks don't necessarily always have those baffles. But we like to get to the edge. Let's see if I can go back a little bit. In this case, you might get a well and septic report that says, okay, heavy root growth in a tank or something because it's an old concrete tank. I like if I can get these visuals. That guy is not going to necessarily stick his hand in the tank, depending on how deep it is, and get those pictures. We can provide these for you sometimes. And sometimes it's nice if I report on it. Why didn't the well and septic guy report on roots in the tank? Quality check each other there. But this is typically what you just see when you get to a tank. Okay, the bottom layer is the scum, the fats, oils, and grease that are floating to the top. This tank was a vacation home, so you notice there's quite a big separation there. We can learn a lot from this. Okay, so with a well and septic inspection, the gentleman or lady is going to run water for 30 minutes. They're going to see if water starts to backflow or anything like that. If water were to fill the tank or start backflowing it at any rate, that could indicate that the drain field might be plugged to some degree. So knowing if the test has already been done or not before I get there is helpful information. But let's just say it's normal usage. Okay, I come to this. At least I know off of normal usage that water has not filled the tank up and backing into the sewer line. If it were to be backing into the sewer line, well, I know before the well and septic guy gets there that there's an issue with the drain field. Things aren't draining the way they need to. Okay? And sometimes it could be a number of different things, but oops. Sorry. Here's an example of what roots can look like. So this is a clay pipe. Okay. So these roots actually got caught on my camera as I'm trying to go through it. I'm only 10 feet out here. So we didn't get in very far before we started seeing some issues. And of course, I don't know the exact length of this, but we might have went out 60, 70 feet, and now we're coming back. On the way back is when you're gonna, your inspector's gonna see what he wants to see. Going out can be messy and dirty. Essentially, we're clearing the drain. If there is an issue, my camera's plowing. It's not designed to do that. It sounds messy, but really, if everything's working, it's only messy when there's an issue. Otherwise, it's a pretty clean inspection. Water should be running. Throughout my inspection, I'm running a ton of water to begin with, so we're flushing everything out. I get out and I come back, but coming back is where you really see everything because things on the way out bump into the lens, sometimes get greasy. Here's another example. This was my brother-in-law's house. So the pipe that you're seeing here in there is the auger. I took this as an example. His line was full. This is what an auger will do. Okay, it created just a teeny tunnel. That's a 4-inch pipe. He had a 2-inch blade on there. So that's the blade that it did. So that's why it's very important to check your plumbing contractor. Did they clean the line the way they wanted to do? He rented an auger. Okay, that was fun. That was a fun process. Had we not had my camera system, he would have thought everything was fine and dandy on the clean. Okay, but that's why there was another pipe in there. Here's an example of a cracked pipe. Okay, so yes, this is a defect, broken clay pipe. The crack's at the top. Okay, we don't have a risk of water draining out of that. We ran a bunch of water to this. Sometimes based off of the water flow, when you shut it off and coming back, we can tell is water leaking out of the pipe or not. We don't want any water leaking out of the pipe because soil compressions and things can happen. But this was just at least helpful information to know, hey, 5 feet out, this was actually on a septic line, 5 feet out, right where the walkway was, we had poor roof drainage, the walkway was sloped, the walkway most likely cracked this. At least now they're aware that, hey, I have a crack in the top portion of that line. This was a fun job. You just never know what you might find in a sewer line. So in this case, there wasn't a good access, so I was going to try to come in through the laundry. And we find a chipmunk. Okay, and so we had a chipmunk sitting in there for a while. Because it was in the water trap, right? Not much of a smell coming out of this, but the client definitely asked the plumber to come out and shop back that clean. And then they did the rest of the scope on it.
Happy Meal toys. Find one of those.
Yeah. Yeah, when I do air duct scopes, you find all kinds of stuff in there. You know, kids' toys, some Mickey Mouse or something. Okay, here's a couple examples of what a sewer scope. These are what my sewer scopes would look like. Not everybody's going to be like this, but giving you the information, putting a bunch of pictures into there. Again, there's more pages to that, but you're trying to identify everything that you've taken a look at for the client. And then, of course, there should be a video link in there that at any point somebody can reference it to. The more information that your inspector can provide, especially on the reporting side, type of pipe, length, location, any issues, gives you guys more information to call up a plumbing contractor and talk a little more educated. Say, okay, I got a house, it's clay pipe, it's 100 and some foot line, just looking at a ballpark, what do you guys charge for cleaning like that, or if there's an issue, things like that. The more information I can give you and the client, the better you guys can talk on the other end to your contract. Okay. So should you inspect the sewer? You never know what's going on unless you scope. It's out of sight, out of mind. We assume it's working until it's not. You discover defects. It could cost thousands to repair sometimes. The average cleaning cost is just in the hundreds. Different cleanings are going to cost different amounts. I think with hydrojetting, that's always a little bit more expensive. They also charge on duration and how far of a distance they're going. Again, with the blade cleaning, could be a few $100, could be depending on how well you want that cleaned. Sewer repairs, arguably the most expensive unknown repair you'll run into on a home. Okay. Roof is a large ticket item as well. You can see the roof for the most part. You can't see the sewer. Okay. And you won't know without running the camera down. So again, the big 3 add-ons there. Radon testing, wood destroying insects, and sewer. Most inspectors will do the first 2. Okay, more are adding on the sewer scope. That equipment has come down greatly in cost. It used to be, only plumbers would pay for the $15,000 equipment. They've come much more affordable on our end. Biggest thing is the education is there. So InterNACHI, about 6-7 years ago, started a program to educate inspectors. Otherwise, how do we know what we're looking at, right? So they have a whole program that you can go through. And that's important too, because the last thing again, there's no agency requiring the certifications for that. Somebody just running a camera down saying, yep, it looks good. You want to know a little bit of more than that. Okay? And then sure, there's other services, mold, microbial growth, right? Thermal scans, indoor air quality. You can get air samples, water samples, chimney inspections, lead testing, asbestos testing, all kinds of stuff.
Drain field inspections?
Yep. So well and septic guys would do that. Some home inspectors may be certified for well and septics. I forget the lady's name. She passed away about 5-6 years ago or so. She was a registered sanitarian. Well and septic inspections, people go to school for that, right? That's a whole expert field in that. And when you get done with your schooling, you're called a registered sanitarian. So there's a big difference between getting a registered sanitarian that does a well and septic inspection for you versus a home inspector that is certified. I don't do well and septic inspections because, again, it's a very niche animal on that. And again, there's just a lot of schooling for it. So sometimes you might, and I'm sure you guys will learn, well and septic inspections are a little bit unique. Each county can be different. Kendall can help you with all this. There's different reportings, what's allowed, what's not, what's required, what's not. Do you provide a diagram for this? Do you not? I think, is it not every county is a little bit different with those?
Every county is different.
Yeah, so sometimes you wonder where the drawing is for your drain field and your tank, and you didn't get it. Well, it might not be required in that county. I wish it was a little bit more uniform on that end, but again, that's kind of how some inspectors can get schooling for it and go provide those. All right, guys. You want to go on an inspection? Do we got time for that? How much time we got?
We got like 15 more minutes.
Okay.
We're good for that.
All right. Well,
I'm sorry, Glenn, I have to go,
that's fine. That's fine. Thank you for coming.
but thank you.
Yeah. I'll leave some of these cards here and so forth, or you can take some now if you'd like. So I just want to kind of rifle through a bunch of, maybe I'll go quick since we only have 15 minutes. Hopefully from these slides, you guys will get an idea of what the home inspection process is. Now, of course, this will be my process, but everybody should be pretty similar, okay? So you always start with coming up to the house, front home picture. You maybe take a little bit of the surroundings. Some of these photos will be in the report, some won't. But in this case, I tried to just take about 400 or 500 pictures so that you guys can see. I always go right to the roof. That's my first thing. Put my ladder up. I take a picture of the ladder. And then as you're climbing up, you're starting to look at everything. Okay, so looking at the roof vents. How many layers are there? This house had one layer. This roof was about a 15 to 20 year roof. Feeling it, taking a look, walking around the roof. Just know that not every inspector is required to get on the roof. There's a lot of different methods that guys use. I personally try to get to everything I can firsthand. Some guys use drones, right? That's just a machine flying up, taking pictures. They don't personally see it. In my opinion, unless they get really good photos, drone inspections is as good as this right here, right? It's no different. We're just looking at the pictures, inspecting. So walking through, granule surface loss. This is an architectural shingle, which will be your 25 to 30 year warranty. Different angles, right? Looking at how was it laid out as there's dips. That's all Craftsman, so forth, of the roof. We're looking at the roof vents. This is what's called a ridge vent here. Just basically everything on the roof. We're just walking through. This was a nice low slope roof that I could easily get to. And as you start walking around, you're just gathering information, taking pictures, writing the report as we go, okay? If you have any questions as we go, let me know, okay? So again, just finding moss. This moss here is not a big deal, but it's something to let the homeowner know about. Hey, we have some moss. Why is that? Is it shady conditions, north side of the house? Vent flashings are always key. So this was a 20-year-old, 15, 20-year-old roof. This roof vent here on the plumbing vent was newer, okay? So that was already replaced. Typically, these will rip out at about 15, 18 years. You might see some splits and cracks in it. A unique little cover on this. Not sure why that was there, but when I get to the attic side, that's something I want to further investigate. Again, just moving through. In this case here, we had different shingles on the one side. Matched up with the seller's disclosure. I was told a few months prior that we had a tree fall on the house. Okay, so we wanted to really make sure we didn't have any damage. Looked like it was just shingles that were replaced. So again, lining up your disclosures with everything. In that far corner, we had a spot that was missed. Okay, so the tree branch hit that, cracked the edge of the shingles, moisture intrusion. What this is telling us here is about kick-out flashing. So what kick-out flashing is an example right here. It's a little piece of flashing designed to let water roll down the shingles and then bump it back into the gutter, okay? So at this joint right there, if the siding's not sealed up well, water can overshoot that and get behind the siding. You see that a lot on new constructions. Not necessarily required for them to do, but it's a good practice to be done. Okay. So, as we're moving, we're going to run across different components. So looking at the chimney, looking at the crown, the cap. This one has a water heater that's venting up through, so we want to touch everything. Is that cap loose? The crown, you can see here on the top cement, starting to age out a little bit. We like to see this complete. In most cases, it should overhang, right? We're thinking about shedding the water. The flashings were redone here. When the roof was replaced, that one spot, they came in and added some more sealants. Again, you see new sealants you want to pay attention to the attic side. Taking a look at the electrical as we're going. Again, flashings, any penetration that comes up to the roof. Now, of course, in the winter, you won't be able to see any of this. If you can get into the attic, we're going to get close to those flashings if we can on the underside and let us know if we have any moisture intrusion. Okay, your service lines coming through. Always want to take a look at trees. Are tree branches touching it? Are they leaning on it? Is that line disconnected? Looking at water management, okay, gutters and site grading are huge. We had a lot of water in these gutters. We'll keep that in the back of our mind as an inspector. How is water flowing away from the home? Okay, we should never see any standing water in a gutter, right? If it's sloped appropriately, it should be draining out. Here's an example. I love this picture. Look at this dam, okay? Fill to one side, the other side just bone dry. And that's the side that's dry. That's where the drain is, okay? So picture's worth 1,000 words. You put this in a report with a narrative and an arrow, it's easy on your guys' end to bring that to the seller's attention, maybe negotiate however see fit. Okay. So after coming down from the roof, I like to get back. Now I'm going to circle around the home. Okay. So again, we got a lot of items that we're going to look at. Taking a look at the driveways, again to the house, just all the surfaces and planes, paying attention to way how water's draining. Again, this is a good picture. If it was sunny and dry, I can't see is water pooling up here. If snow's pooling up, covered, we don't know that we're going to have a low spot in that. Just maintenance things, areas to keep an eye on. And then we'll put those in the report if we can. Oop, I'm going the wrong way, sorry. Okay, cracks, steps, going up and down. Pretty much everything we can look at on the outside of the house. Again, windows, siding, touching lights. In this case, this light here, we circled it because there's a gap there, moisture intrusion spot. Upper corner of this, the J channel wasn't bent over. There's a big gap there. Rainwater, look at the drips that are just going to drip behind that. Trying to keep that in the back of the inspector's mind alerts me to take a look on the inside when I get to there if we have any moisture intrusion. That's where thermal scans really help. Siding overlaps, okay, right? This house is older, so it doesn't have a house wrap. That's a gap in the siding. Wind-driven rain will get right into that. We have loose lights, retaining walls, okay. Looking for cracks, here's a loose cap. Not a huge deal to report on, nothing to elevate, but what if your kid stands on it? Should be secured down, right? Somebody could trip and fall. It's nice to put in. Beautiful landscape. Doesn't really need a handrail. I don't know necessarily who's visiting this home. It's an improvement note I can say. Put a handrail there, right? Retaining wall drainage. So if you see that pipe in the bottom corner, the number one reason why a wall is going to fail is because of poor drainage behind it. So that's always key. Loose siding. Great pictures there to put in your report.
Glenn, can you tell us real quick too, since again we have a lot of newer ones,
Yeah.
What are we generally, if you go back a photo or two, yeah, like right in there.
Yeah.
What are we generally looking for that gap between the ground and where the siding
Oh,
starts?
this here? So standards say 6 to 8 inch clearance, but we like to have a nice foundation separation there. Okay, and the reason for is we don't want vegetation, snow, anything from coming up from the ground, getting to our siding, because right at the siding, one row up, that's where the wood framing starts. That's where the insulation of the wall and everything starts. When you have low grade areas, people come in with a bunch of mulch they put in there, they cover everything up. Could be a highway for infestation, moisture intrusion, all kinds. So we like to have a good separation. Sometimes you'll just look around at the house. Over the years, has things been built up? Sorry, let's take some sweat equity and rake all that away. So again, just moving around the house, everything that we can put our eyes onto in different components. So here's the wellhead. So step back, take a picture of that. Again, looking at entryways, gates, everything that we can see on the outside. This is letting the inspector know on how the house is defending itself. So everything I'm seeing on the outside, as far as this side's really flat, okay? And this is where the gutters were overflowing. Here's a little bit of a dip into this side. So we have low grade to that. When we get to the inside, we'll notice, do we have any moisture intrusions, things like that. Exterior faucets, this is a frost freeze hose bib. There's different styles, of course. Again, looking at that foundation separation. So back to wood destroying insects. I can look at that lower foundation from a couple feet away with just inspecting the foundation. Doing a pest inspection, you can't look for pests like that. You have to get close. We have to take a look. See that dark shaded corner? You got to get in there, get your eyes on it, get your flashlight, high lumens to make sure nothing's going between that crack. Again, that's where pest inspection additional time comes into play. Okay, looking at site grading. These are just things that I look at, okay? Dryer vent, everything. Some inspectors might look at more, might look at less, kind of get used to what their standards of practice is. But pretty much everything on the outside that's attached to the home should have its eyes on, should look at. Might not necessarily be commented on in the report, but things that we're going to be looking at. The more you can comment on, the better, okay? Decks, where the deck connects to the house is always a key thing. Missing the light bulb, not a huge deal. Don't know if it works or not. You can turn the switch on. If you're lucky, you can put your tester in there, but if it's completely glass, we're not taking the glass off. AC unit, so this is the exterior portion. Look at the bottom of it, right? Covered in dirt, in a low drainage area. It's sitting fairly level, which is good, but this is only going to make things worse over time, so let's rake that away. Try to take pictures of the serial numbers. This was a 2001, if I believe. It's always important to look at the electrical amperage because we want to correlate that back in the electrical panel, okay? This one says an amperage max of 20. We have a 30 there, okay? This has been there for 25 years. Going up a little bit of amperage is typically fine. If it were to be a 40 or something, you might call it out, of course, let somebody know. Perspective, if it's been there 20 years and it hasn't been an issue, but an older unit that's getting near its life expectancy, if it were to surge or something and we have an increase, it could run into an issue. Again, the data tag says only a 20. So next heating and cooling, maybe have your contractor go out there and just take a look at for servicing. Open gaps, water management's key. Okay, any openings, like to make people aware of this. We're focusing on it. We are in cold climates, so wherever water is going to sit, the cold climate causes freeze and thaw. We want to make sure that our home isn't necessarily watertight, or so waterproof, but watertight, that we're not letting moisture in. I like to look at this. Sometimes there's a meter clip, sometimes it's not there, which means the meter socket could come right out if you open that up. It's a big safety hazard. Also might alert to tampering of the meter, right? So one thing with inspections, right, there's a lot that you can see the inspectors looking at. We're outside, at least I'm outside about 45 minutes before I even get into the home. Okay, so 2.5 hours, it's about 45 outside, hour 15 or more inside, depending on talking, all of this. Some clients want to be there for the full inspection. They tend to get bored after about 15, 20 minutes, or they get exhausted after just going around the outside because there's so much. Letting people know the process of what the inspector does is very important again. I like to give a write-up to people beforehand, very transparent of what I'm going to do for them so they know. That way they can almost skip the first 45 minutes or sit in their car not too long, show up when I'm just about to go inside. We can recap a few things, maximize everybody's time. I always say that they're welcome to be there the full amount of time. It's right. They got a 3-hour window there for them to look at the house again. It's a great time for them to dream, room measurements, plan, invite people, look at the house again, because I'm sure the home viewing was short. Okay, so come inside, you got your equipment. I always wear shoe covers, something I think I'm a guest in somebody's home, so why not cover my feet? Might walk around the house, just get an idea for it, see where some systems are, and then I go right to the thermostat. I like to bump the heat on. I always do, no matter what season it is, I go furnace, and I have my own routine. I'll go to the furnace, and then I'll start looking at the AC from there. Okay, we're making sure that the heat is working. Come through, open it up. This is a high efficiency furnace, so the big thing that we're going to pay attention to here is for condensation leaks. This is the inducer motor, the burners, dirty burners, getting the age on it. This is a 2009. Every appliance is going to have their age embedded in their serial number. So something you guys could always look up if you wanted. Here was a past condensate issue. So going to run the water or the furnace for multiple minutes, try to recreate any leaks if possible. Look for data tags. Was anything reported on servicing? Here's where the condensate drains out. Electrical shut off, furnace filters. Again, we're not heating and cooling techs, inspectors aren't, but there's a lot of systems that we are going to go through and take a look at. Looking at ductwork, I like to try to take some pictures for my client. This one obviously could benefit from air duct cleaning. A lot of hair. The current owner was a pet owner. It's nice to know about, right? You don't want to move in with a mess of this. Try to spin the blower motor. Older furnaces, you can tell if the blower's starting to wear out, so get your hands in there as an inspector. And again, looking at past maintenance history. We had an old condensate leak. There was nothing labeled here. It's worth asking a question. Moving through all the ductwork, dampers, back to the AC in my process. Okay, in this case, it was too cold, so I wasn't able to run. This is a spot here where the liquid and suction line meet. This insulation has been pulled back, so you'll get some condensation that drips. That's an indication of past dripping in the summertime. All things like this, again, will be put in the report. This is where the condensate's going to drain to. Most of the time, the water heater's real close. Okay. We'll rifle through all of that. I know you guys are getting tired. Doing thermal scans. Not everybody does thermal scans. Making sure that we don't have any leaks, but just lots of systems and components. Okay. Well and septic, again, I'm not going to test these in depth like a well and septic guy would be, but I do like to look at the components, go through them. Pressure switch, Lisa, if I can tell you if it's any scorched pressure settings, maybe those pressure settings line up. Identifying the major shutoffs is always important for your client. Corrosion. This is PEX plumbing, drain lines. Any questions on an inspection? It can be boring over time for people to just hang around, and so keep that in mind, right? As I'm going through, I'm not trying to ignore you, but there's a lot that we have to focus on and look at. So if you are going to join your inspection with a client, or if your client's going to be there, try to set those expectations. Let him know that it's going to be a handful of hours. I always tell everybody I'm there to help. So if you've probably seen more of the house than me, but if there's something that you're antsy about and you want to say, Glenn, what is this? I'm here to help. Drop my bag, come over there. Probably haven't looked at it yet. A lot of times people are always just interested in different things. Load-bearing walls is a big question. If I know what all the load-bearing walls are. This is a common thing I want to point out to you guys. You'll get in electrical inspections. So the white wires are your neutrals. We like to have each neutral on its own terminal like that. That's best practice. So you'll get in a report a lot where there's a subject line called about doubled up neutrals or multiple neutrals connected. Basically what it has to mean is having each neutral on its own terminal. Okay. Again, electrical, thermal scans, and then moving through, looking at the structure. In this case, the meter for the house was on the inside. And just keep going. We got a ton of stuff here. Any questions on the home inspection process? Has anybody been on an inspection yet? 1, 2?
Adam's been on me.
Adam,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry, I'm sorry, yeah, I've been on a lot. I don't typically go anymore, Evan.
No. So here again, that back corner. So on the outside, we were noticing some drainage issues. This would be what we start running into as far as moisture intrusion. So you can put a meter on it. This is elevated. Here it's almost 100% saturated. Again, we have different types of meters. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks. It was really helpful.
Poking and probing it again.
Thanks, Leah.
Here, there must have been an issue in the basement at one point. Maybe it was an older water heater or drainage issue, but we have some growth that's on the backside of these walls. Okay, new paint on the inside, growth on the backside. Now again, this is where we won't call it mold, but we'll identify it as microbial growth and start adding some pictures into this. And then from here, this is a single bath house, so we're just running through, looking at all the components, flushing toilets, running water. Here was new tile grout. Yeah.
I just want to say, this is really, really thorough. You got like everything on the outside that I would have got. I was a building material salesperson before, and you got like the inside corner, under seal, all that
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, you got everything you would.
It pays. It really pays to do a good job for your client, right? If you're not going to take that additional time, I hear it's a common thing I end up hearing is we had a bad experience in the past, found you online or something, or my agent recommended. My past inspector went through the house in 45 minutes. And then you just kind of throw your head back there, 45 minutes, wow. Okay, and then you just realize as you start going through, and sometimes again, I feel like you're there to help. There's so much to look at. You also feel like you're neglecting some people, right? But there's so much to do, and if you're not looking at it at all, you're kind of doing a disservice.
Yeah, for a buyer, like you want to find all these issues and stuff, so you should.
Yep. And again, it's finding these, right? Not all this will be in the report. Maintenance things, yes, but then it is our job to say, yes, these are just maintenance. Give them not necessarily a grade on the home, because you got to be sensitive to everybody's feelings. But to let them know, like, these are areas to focus on. Here's a maintenance list that we built. This case, the high loop of the dishwasher just wasn't secured. Okay, that's a minor thing, but it's worth noting to them. What if that falls down? Again, doing some thermal scans. So at this point, I've ran water at all the fixtures, just moving through, okay? So then I go back and we got to start looking for drain leaks. So it's a lot of back and forth and a lot of up and down. And that's where, again, buyers, I had some people that just chase me around the house. They get their steps in, right? We'll get about 35 to 4,000 steps in the house, no problem. Once we come off the plumbing, now it's just moving through the home. Windows, doors, lights, outlets, thermal scans. This helps prelude me to what I might see in the attic. In this case, everything looks nice and fine. Yes, we see the thermal bridging of the trusses above, but there's no missing insulation, no moisture intrusions. Okay. Here's a little settlement crack. It's nothing major, but something to point out to somebody. Again, just checking the heating system, making sure we got nice items going. I do put a lot of pictures in my report. I try to, this is 500 some photos. There won't be 500 some photos in the report, but you try to storyboard it. I always think if somebody can pick up my report a year later and get a sense for that home and never been there, you've done a great job for them. Okay, in this case, the garage door. Okay, you always like to take a look at a garage door, all the components first before you open it. Here's a side-mounted lift. Good thing I didn't because the door was locked. Okay, had I had opened that and if there wasn't a safety, it would have went up, might have tried to bump through that lock, could have fallen off the track, could have did a number of damage. Of course, you got to slide that out. Door does open, closes nicely. These are the safety sensors. Those should only be placed about 6 inches off the ground. You see them high up, especially where people own trucks. I don't know if they think their hitch or their bumper is going to hit that first. We don't want anybody going underneath that sensor. That's why it's there. This was a unique, right? Somebody made their own custom extension cord to power the garage door opener. So there it was. You can see how it powers back onto that. It's functional. It's GFCI protected, so that was nice. You run into quirky things like that. What do you do, right? You tell somebody it should be improved. Is that something that's going to be the challenge on your end? Somebody, a buyer might say that has to be corrected. And then you guys, you got to give them the big perspective on things. Okay, here's the biggest challenge of the inspection really is the attic, okay? So getting into the attic space. Thankfully, I'm small. I've been blessed to not be 6 foot. Some attic spaces are really small to get into. What if this whole closet was filled with personal items? That can be a challenge too. I will go through the extra effort and remove things if I can. I've had to take down all pantries. Of course, I get permission in advance to do that. Anything that we can to get all eyes on the better. Now, this is one area that you won't let a buyer go with you. You can see how tight this is, okay? Getting into the attic space. Once you're in the attic, you're just moving through. Looking at everything, all components. This is trusses in this case. You're starting to see a theme here. Why is everything painted white? Okay, why was that white? Anybody have a guess?
Mold.
Yep. So there was probably a ventilation issue, maybe a contributing source in the past, and there was attic growth. Good practice that some companies do, they'll spray and treat it, and then they'll throw a microbial primer onto this. But that's why it was painted white. So ventilation, these are the soffit vents, missing baffles. Attic insulation, only about 3 inches, so there's room for improvement. If this were to be winter, here's the plumbing vent stack that I want to get to make sure that that boot wasn't torn, leaking, and dripping. Bath fans, #1 contributor to issues in the attic, of course. Missing insulation on that, so huge energy loss, a lot of humidity. This alone could have been one of the reasons for that past moisture growth in the attic. We always want to make sure this is going outside. Going through the soffits is not best practice, but can be effective. Okay, so missing insulation. The ductwork's not insulated either, potential to condensate. A lot of debris in this attic space. I like how there's an old terrarium or fish tank in the back there. And just spots. Looking through, in this house, we started finding a bunch of different little growth, missing insulation, rodent droppings, tunneling. And that's it, guys. And this is what the report would look like.
Thank you.
Sweet.
Yeah, I know that was a lot. I'm exhausted too.
I'll bet.
I do have a question, like on your sewer scopes, how much additional are your add-ons to your basic?
Yep, so everything will be on my site. Very transparent there. $175 to do a sewer scope add-on, $175 for a radon, $100 for a pest, and then I have a few other things as well.
And then if you're just doing those like
I just want
a
to
la
make sure.
carte, like if although I don't want to know what my sewer looks like.
Yeah.
But if I had hired you to take a look, what,
Yep.
like
Sewer scope typically a 225, 250, depending on where I'm located in Grand Rapids. So if I have to drive, then I might charge more. If it's local or if it's close, or like if you call, I'd give you a discount.
I don't want to know. I'd rather have a bill and have my insurance covered at this point because
Well, that's important too. Check your insurance to make sure you do have a rider.
I do. I just put a rider on my house. I got caught between the grinder pump and the fire department hanging out of my house. It was not even fire. I had a tenant in the pool looking out, and after they left, my tenant heard the sewer bubbling up.
Okay?
And it's on a lake, so the city and I got into a big skirmish, and what happened was from the weight of the equipment, it broke the connection from the grinder pump to the main in the street.
Wow.
And they covered it for me, but it was gonna be like 25 grand. Oh my gosh, thank God they covered it, I was sick, but it was all the heaviness of all the equipment, and they were driving back and forth trying to find the homes.
Sure. And that's very, very glad that was covered, but like on the normal inspection, getting to that tap connection is very important. Because what if there is an issue or a break or correction there that needs to be made? If the city comes through and does their own inspections, they have what called pan tilt cameras that they can turn and look up your line. They might deem an issue there your responsibility, and you're just going along, like, wait a minute, now I have a correction, what?
Exactly, you do in the sewer, scope, you do both from the grinder pump to the middle of the street, so I've been warning everybody, calling our insurance, get a rider,
Yep.
their brakes, their
I didn't know you were-
responsibility, and they're all
Yeah.
from the
If
sixties.
I can't respond, I will respond.
Yep.
Really, like, dicey situation.
When we were new,
It's
when I was
generally
new,
because
right, she
after
was
8
starting
o'clock,
to think,
I don't watch
she was in the
my
office
phone.
quite a bit.
Thank you so much, that was really, really.
Let me know how that goes today.
I never even heard of the sewer stuff, so
Scope's nice.
that's
You're welcome. Thanks for sticking with me.
It was a very good class, wasn't it, Susan? I was just keeping these as extra for the office. You can have, you've got more front too, so you can have
Yeah.
extra if you want, absolutely.
I'm good with Rich.
Liam, that was great.
I hope so.
Thanks.
Got a little long-winded, but
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
well, I do
that's-
the same thing,
you
right?
get-
Because you just have
you
so
talk about
much
swing
knowledge that you can
More
pass
often.
on, and then you get more into.
Well, I don't,
I wanted to.
No,
So I give
it
everyone
was,
a date.
That it said,
It was a
yeah,
blood
that
infection,
everybody
but it
got
was
one of
not,
these, so
but
that's
that's
really nice.
the worst,
to have
right,
too.
because it's
I mean,
inside,
just
it's already got the
basically
bad stuff.
for homeowners.
It goes over all the things that we expect from Internocky, so. Inter-
Right, so she's down in Florida for like 4 days in between when two renters will come
Yeah,
back
yeah.
and fix it up.
You have all these
Okay,
here,
thank you.
the office
All right,
copies.
I'll put them
Stuff.
over here in our,
And so they.
We have a whole section.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
For sure.
schools and
And
things, and I mean, we really appreciate being here. I thought you did a fabulous job last week. You know, Carlos was thrilled.
Your work is flying into another hospital, and bowel surgeons coming in
Defects
on that.
anywhere.
Yeah.
That, we're putting you under in 20
Yeah.
minutes or less.
So, but.
You're going under now.
So such a blessing she got,
Yeah, yeah.
like where she did get.
So,
I wouldn't push it up.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
oh,
So
it's my
glad.
pleasure, and if I can be of assistance back to you at any point in time, let me know.
Glenn, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
So
Thanks for sticking with
is Valentine a fairly common name or is it uncommon?
me.
I worked with a guy on the other side of the state named Lance Valentine. He's a walleye guy, walleye fishing.
I don't think it's that common. My family's from the east side of the state.
Okay.
There's not many of us, but every once in a while we bump into it.
So I just haven't heard it that often, and I was like, who related to Lance? Anyway, his family ran out like a two-way radio
Oh, cool.
business over there and has been in, I don't know, northern Detroit for, their whole lifetime.
Yeah.
So I just wanted
You
to.
can have another.
Lance wasn't
I'm
one.
Lance
I
Valentine.
didn't have another place.
I do want,
Okay.
but.
Well, I appreciate your time. I got your
Yes.
card, do a lot of things, so
This,
would
I know
love to
better.
connect with you sometime, do that.
Like,
I think this was good, worthwhile for you guys to come in and do that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
That's great.
You guys have a great
I
day.
missed
You
the,
too, and thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
I missed the leader in this one. I didn't know he was Lisa's daughter. Or son.
Now,
Daughter,
hold
yeah, I
on.
was about to say, what the heck? What are you taking?
Son.
You mean John?
Yeah, no, but his mom is Lisa. West.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't
But
know
I was
that.
still focused, like, you were saying something about Glenn, and I was like, huh?
I knew a guy named Valentine on the other side of the state.
Sorry, it was just going totally over my head.
Yeah, my dad's a builder. Probably-
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so my brother took over his part of the business and, yeah, does that with him now.
I just bought an interior home for clients up on Silver Lake. Well, the used to be Silver Lake Country.
Oh,
It's
I
weird,
know that
but
lies
it's just,
in
it was weird
that.
because when we did my house, it's an interior home.
Yeah.
I worked at Zeal Lumber at the time as a sales rep there, and so I sold my own lumber package, got it at wholesale cost. And then my brother and my dad trimmed it, and then with me, and then I got my buddy Jake Loving to frame it, and we did all the stuff. So it was like an interior home, but they were like, "This is the best interior home like that
We've ever made.
Yeah, RJ Harsh was like walking through my house, like, what the heck? He's like,
So the guy that bought Silver Lake Country Club is a friend of ours, and then he sold that off for those guys to build those bunch of homes or whatever. But his son or his stepson and my son are good friends, and they would drive golf carts around up neighbors get all pissed off and do that kind of stuff. And I'm married to Dykema, so if you've ever heard of the excavation, Grand Rapids Gravel, Gravel, I have, like excavators, yellow trucks running around.
yeah, there was a guy.
There's more.
Yep, I really like that. I know Jason Moss, their salesperson. You know,
I don't.
yeah, you know, but yeah, but yeah, I work with him a bunch every day.
That's the same, so Jason or Mary Ellen, like, so finally even now they got like a marriage.
That's crazy. There's a royal wedding. Yeah, they have all this stuff, but yeah, no, I need to look you up and I'm trying to get people where I can do open houses right now.
I got one you can do.
Do you?
Mm-hmm. Look up 945 60th Street. Now, for me, it's on the wrong side of town. It's Salt, Wyoming address. Really, it comes up as Byron Center when you're looking at it on like Google Maps or whatever.
Sycamore? How do you?
60th. 945 60th.
945 60th Street, Wyoming. Okay.
Wrong side of town for you, maybe. But
No, I'm in Granville.
oh, check it.
Yeah.
Vacant. It's my friend's house. I'm selling it for him. I had Shannon Carpenter hold it open last weekend. My guy does meet clients there because he works out of the pole barn some, but with a little bit of advance notice, I can maybe hold it open anytime you want.
Cool. I'll do it this week. What time you got? My wife's homesick right now. I was home.
You tell me what works for you. If I'm doing them during the week, I like to do them during drive time. If you know the area, so you get off at 56th Street off 130, well, I do anyway. So I get off on 56th Street. The first one you come to is Byron Center, right? Byron Center south a half mile, right a quarter mile on 60th. So the nice thing for open house signs is you can put them out on Byron Center, you can put them out on 56 if you want. So with 2, 4, 6 signs, you could get, pretty good traffic.
So I have just went, my last set of open house, I did it at 3. So I've done 8 in a month so far.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to keep up the pace, just really hammer it out. I've been here for 30 days and I've got 8 open houses. So I'm trying to get.
I built my business on open house. They're great.
Yeah.
I mean, you try to do them when you're going to get something. If only 1 or 2 people come, that's still a win in my book. I got a vacant listing he might be able to hold open.
Oh, that'd be great.
I had the best luck with Sunday.
So I do too. Always, Sundays are always the best.
Could I do the 21st?
Is that this coming Sunday?
Yeah,
Yeah.
21st is this
Yeah.
Sunday. So
Right here, right down your, in my little sheet, right down your contact information. I'll add you into my phone, and then I'll go ahead and schedule. I do mine 1 to 3 on Sunday. I'm gonna take this 1 piece of pizza, take it with me if that's okay.
Go right ahead.
There's a whole one left. I didn't. And tell your mom I said hello and that I wish her the best in recovery. I should probably just reach out to her
yeah,
if she's feeling up to it.
no one knows about what happened with her, and she
I
was
won't say. I won't say.
terribly embarrassed. She's like, I don't want anybody to know. I don't want
I
anybody
mean,
to
that's
know.
how she is. Fuck that. I mean, it's a, it'd be like, if you had a heart attack, you would be embarrassed.
That is word for word what I said to her. Is that I was like, I think I said